Okay, hi, welcome to week 4 of Introduction to Linguistics Phonology. Um, if you look up phonology, wiki books, because I'm keeping this OER, now it's kind of interesting. The branch of linguistics that studies how languages systematically organize their phones or their sounds, and they say for sign language, their constituent parts of signs. This term can also refer specifically to the sound or sign system of a particular language variety. So phonetics of English, right? Or phonology of English. At one time, the study of phonology related only to the study of systems of phonemes in spoken languages, but may relate to any linguistics analysis either. And you see this in the Catherine Anderson Essentials of Linguistics assignment. She gets really deeply into syllables, which is important to understand syllables, even for teaching ESL. But she goes in much more depth than we need to in an introductory class. Syllable onset and rhyme, articulatory gestures, articulatory features, more, etc. So when you read the chapters and look at the videos, they'll talk about that stuff. You don't need to focus on that. There's certain things you need to focus on. All levels of language in which sound or signs are structured to convey linguistic meaning. Now, when I took linguistics and phonology, undergraduate and graduate courses, phonetics, phonology, we did not include sign language in this. So this is something new I've seen in the last decade. It may go back further, but it wasn't there 28 years ago when I got my master's. Oh, okay. So now, phonology is typically distinguished from phonetics, which concerns the physical production, acoustic transmission, and perception of the sounds or signs of language, right? Um, the kind of articulatory phonetics, acoustic phonetics, and auditory phonetics is what the three. Phonology describes the way in which they function within a given language or across languages to encode meaning. For many linguists, phonetics belongs to the descriptive linguistics and phonology to theoretical linguistics. Not necessarily true because some of it is actually kind of not that subjective. Okay, so they go over the history and everything like that. Okay, so I apologize if the pages is a little bit overwhelming, if there's too much stuff there. I was kind of asked in structuring this by the college by the California guidelines to integrate more of the CSLOs, of course, student learning outcomes, and course objectives. So I've done that, but the problem for students, I feel, is like, wow, it's a lot of writing, and I apologize for that. Also, you can just go to the modules and go through each week, and you can go to the calendar, or you can just look at the due dates and go through each week. So if you go here, right, click on this, it'll take you to the module for week 4. There it is. It's going to change how it looks after I finish this video, and upload it with the questions, whatever. I'll put the questions in the link. Okay, so first off, take notes on at least 10 facts from this crash course video.
What's it like to learn math on Brilliant.org?
Oh,
Brilliant gets you hands-on to help you learn by doing. Learn topics from everyday math.
Hi, I'm Taylor and welcome to Crash Course Linguistics. Could you get me a glass of water? What if I asked you for water? Like some people, but certainly not me, pronounce it. For other people, that T in the middle of the word can become water. Our brains treat these different sounds as equivalent. It's still liquid H2O.
So from phonetics, right? That's water on the top. That's what they call a flap. That's a normal T in the middle, the voiceless, right? Water, and then the well, it's not labial, it's alveolar. Sorry, and the third one is water, like the glottal stop. So that's right there, right? That's showing within a language, within dialects, some of the phonological differentiation, which is represented in phonetic notation.
whether you pronounce it water, water, or wa. This isn't just true for T. All of the sounds or hand shapes of a language can be produced differently depending on the context. Different languages and accents have their own variation. These patterns and the study of them is known as phonology. When we first start to pay attention to phonology, it's like trying to see the trick in an optical illusion.
Anyway, so there's that. Always cool. Always, I think, engaging, interesting. And in general, I like crash courses, but that's just me. I'm kind of a nerd. Here, okay, so I ask you to read the kind of the chapters and watch the videos. But I only want you to know, like, there's certain things I'm going to test you on. One of them is articulatory processes in phonology well, these include like when sounds are reduced or deleted. It doesn't have to be vowels, but vowels are often, you could say weaker in some ways. So in the phonetic notation idea, right, you may add or you may reduce. The adding of a sound is, whether it's a vowel or a consonant, is called epenthesis, right? And these questions, this series of questions, after you watch the video, I do want you to answer those and remember them. But those are here, right? 1, 2, 3, and then here, there's a thing where I'm showing you. This is a IPA generator, right? And I don't care if you do it British or American English, it's fine. The list, right? There's no possibility. This is going to come up with American English because I have it set up that way. If it loads, yeah. So here's the phonetic notation, including down to Charlotte Bronte. So, and then a few more questions, right? Are M and M phonemically contrastive in English? Are P and P, right, phonemically contrastive in English? And so that's the phonology part. There's a chapter on phonology, chapter on phonetics, 3 and 4. Read them all, know about them, but what I'm testing on you is more limited. Okay, so dialect quiz. There used to be a really great quiz from the New York Times. I had everybody do. It still was wrong for me, though I have a very distinct idiolect, which is your distinctive dialect. Usually you can get it free for a week. Usually let you have so many articles. I don't know, with me, they just do this. I don't know. So you may or may not want to subscribe. I have problems with some of the political kind of takes of the New York Times and international affairs, so I don't want to give them money. But so if you're blocked, go ahead and go to this WikiHow American dialect quiz, right? You say soda versus, so it's not just the accent, it's also dialects can have accent, which is phonetics and phonology, and it can have morphology, have syntax and grammar, different grammatical according to different regions, different constructions, and lots of vocabulary, right? So if soda versus pop, it's different in the Northeast and Midwest. We say pop in the Midwest, and in the West we say soda. In parts of the South, for any type of soda, you will say Coke, which is weird to me, but lots of dialects do lots of cool things. This should be pretty interesting. Help you to figure out, like, just look at language, how it really works. And this is kind of the same, but not as much. This is like just looking at, well, it lays out first one, weird phonemes. You don't have to do it. It's pretty cool. I would do it. It's 5 points extra credit. Then each set is 5 points. Looking at aspects of phonology. You won't be tested on all of those. It's really important to look at. Everything tested is in the Kahoot, or it's in the notes I give you before the test, the study guides. Here's Eric Singer again. Dude, seriously. everything.
With Amex Platinum.
Okay. Eric Singer again on accents and dialects, and his he has them on lots of different topics, but this is breaking down 32 actors' accents and just kind of observing. Again, it's like phonetics and phonology in practice, and as teachers, as speech pathologists, and many different aspects of life, it'll become a really useful skill to have. And I think they're fun, and it's like one of those places where you can kind of just go off and explore, do a deep dive down the rabbit hole, if you want. So this is the history of the F word, right? So if you don't, if it's against your religious like values, I mean, technically I'm not supposed to cuss as a Muslim, but very, I was raised with bad words. But also sometimes they're powerful, and I don't mean them to be vulgar, but just to communicate power. There's a whole discussion of, cuss words and stuff like that. So if they offend you, if this offends you, then don't do it. It's fine. I won't just say, hey, I find this this goes against my personal morals. I'm cool with that. But it is a type of etymology. So this is a BBC thingy that discusses the whole history of the F word, man, and where it come from, and what are some folk etymology, like F. Folk etymology means like what people think the word came from. And this is a giant thing, right? People think things came from places and they really didn't. So I'm trying to make, for once, you ever hear, like, I don't know if you guys studied Hamlet, but since brevity is the soul of wit, let me be brief, I will be brief, or whatever he says. Polonius says that. And it's really ironic because, Polonius talks way too much. I mean, yeah, the meddling guy, and he has all these wisdom things he says really easily, and then he's not about any of that wisdom at all, which is why he gets killed. Well, like lots of people get killed in Hamlet. That's it for this week. I will say that phonology is really interesting. Muslims, when we read the Quran, we learn Arabic is really kind of more of a phonetically accurate language, but those places, like, you read it as it's written for the most part, unlike English. And they do have really developed Arabic linguistics from what would be the Western medieval period, that make sure that you help you to make sure that you pronounce everything exactly as it was pronounced, going back over your lineage back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who passed in 632 of the the common era. So this gives you the kind of like 5 areas. Like these are their points of articulation, from the halq, the throat, to this is the kind of the jawf is like the cavity, the vocal cavity, the lips, the tongue, etc. The articulators there, is what that is. And then differentiation of like, how do you pronounce each letter? When do you change it phonologically? It's really interesting because we'll do things like, if you think like, I don't know in English, they have rules like iklab. So before an end sound, you change I'll have to show you. So if you have an N sound before a B, then because the place of articulation for the B is bilabial, it will change into an M sound, right? So, so instead of min bad, you say min bad. So that's like lots of all these phonological things that are essential to a Muslim practices religion, reads Quran, things like that. So it's not always like it's really important actually. So it's not, I'd say that Western scholars and English scholars, not the only ones who use this. This was really, really important. There's about 2 billion Muslims in the world, and they all, to some extent, should be practicing that. So that's phonology. I want to keep this brief for once, and that's the introduction this week. And I will try to make these more brief. Right. Take care. Oh, wait.